Does a record label actually need a website? Well, gun to my head, I think the answer is no. You really don't technically need a website. I've seen some record labels who've just used their Bandcamp as their homepage, or even a SoundCloud page, or even an Instagram account as their homepage. So you don't technically need to have a record label website. Let's assume that we're going to try to do everything in our power to make sure that our music gets heard. Everything that we can do to connect with fans and potential fans. So with that in mind, let's take the 10 steps that you need to create a record label website from scratch. A big shout out to my friends at Squarespace for sponsoring today's video, but more on them in just a little bit, obviously because it ties in really well. Also, I'll say that we're just going to kind of blast through these 10 steps pretty quickly, but this has been taken from one of our micro courses called Web Design for Record Labels, which is part of our bigger Record Label Academy. And so there's tons of courses in there that focus on little subjects, not just on making a website, but also stuff like sync licensing, music publishing, marketing, and lots more. So go check that out by going to otherrecordlabels.com/academy. Now, I do speak with a bit of authority here because with other record labels, I'm often searching record labels' websites to have them on our podcast or just to learn more about them when they join our community. And so I'm always going to record label websites multiple times a week. And oftentimes I get kind of frustrated because I'm like, oh, I can't find the information I need, or this is too confusing, or I can't find the website at all. And so we're going to address some of those issues. And in a future episode, we're going to talk about the top 10 record label website mistake that I see. And I think you'll find that helpful. But today, let's start from step 1 all the way to step 10 about creating a record label website, especially if you are brand new to starting your record label and you're like, okay, I'm ready to do a record label website. What do I need? Where do I begin? This video is for you. But if you are a record label, you already have a record label website, this video will be helpful too, because you can go through and be like, oh, that super handsome Canadian said that I'm missing this. I should maybe add that. Your words, not mine. Okay, here we go. Step 1. Define your objective. So if you're new to creating a website or you're new to creating a record label, let's ask the question first, why do I need a website, or do I need a website, or what am I trying to achieve with my website? What are my goals with my website? I'm just asking you to pause for a second. Before you go to Squarespace and sign up or whatever, just pause for a second, take out a piece of paper and go, what are our objectives here? Well, I think there's kind of 3 main objectives that any record label website should have. The first would be like commerce, right? Selling things. And a lot of people are moving towards selling MP3s or selling record label merch or selling records on their own website, as opposed to going through a third party like in addition to a third party like Bandcamp or iTunes or whatnot. So commerce is like obviously one of the big things. You're kind of an online business. And so a lot of record labels will use their website to sell things. Secondly, and probably the most important, is to sample music, is for people to come to you to listen to music, to hear your artists, to hear your releases. The third, and probably the most important thing, I probably should have put this at first, which is to introduce your brand. Introduce your record label to anyone who wants to know. Maybe it's me trying to produce a podcast about record labels and I want to learn about you because I'm interviewing you. But in most cases, it's fans who love you or new fans who just heard about you and want to dig a little bit deeper. And so this is the objective, is to say, okay, we're going to present our brand, not just explicitly, not just saying, here's how our record label started and what we're trying to do. But oftentimes, like subconsciously, implicitly, we say like in how the fonts that we choose and how minimalist or kind of intricate and cool our website looking is basically like the design, using the design and the aesthetic to communicate our brand to potential fans. Number 2 is to pick a website host. And this might be a great little moment just to talk about this week's sponsor, Squarespace. Now, I have used, regardless of whether they sponsor this or not, I have used Squarespace for my own record label website now for probably at least 10 years, way more than 10 years, probably 15 years I've used Squarespace. And I've been really happy with them, not just because of the cool looking templates that they have for not just artists, but things like podcasts and stuff that really adapt well to record label websites. Or if you're using Squarespace to create a website for you, if you're an indie artist, or if you're a record label creating a website for one of your artists, there's so many great templates that you can use. I also use Squarespace for other record labels, our huge hub of resources and free downloads and our online courses and our videos and our articles for record labels. I've been using Squarespace for otherrecordlabels.com. I love it. It's super easy to use. I personally like it because it's easy and it's elegant. Like it looks really nice and it looks cool and professional. I think it's like, to me, I think it's the best for the arts community. Just that's why a lot of photographers, a lot of visual artists and art and musicians will use it. If you want 10% off your website, then click the link in the description below, or just when you're checking out, use our coupon code ORL10. That's ORL standing for other record labels 10, ORL10 for 10% off when you sign up with Squarespace. So it's just important that we're going to pick a host. Now, maybe you're a great coder and you're going to code all this from scratch. You're going to do a WordPress site. Maybe you're going to use another provider. I don't really care. You do you, but it's important that you know where you're hosting your website and how much that's going to cost on a monthly or annual basis. Keep this stage simple. It's not really a big deal. Step 3, and also not a huge deal, is pick a domain name. I think it's really important to keep this simple, not to overthink it. But what I do think is important when you are picking a domain name, .coms are still pretty popular. So you could do something regional to you. But if you're a global record label, then let's kind of go for a .com, I think, or maybe .music. Is that available? I don't know. .com is pretty basic, but whatever that URL is, like whatever your domain name is, try to have it match your other social media accounts as best as possible. I think it could be kind of confusing if like your Instagram account is like, Popcorn Records 69, and then your YouTube sub URL is like pop_corn_records, and then your .com is like popcorn-records-record label. You know what I mean? Like, I think that it's important to have consistency across the board, just because if someone finds you on Instagram and then they want to go to your website, it's a little bit easier if like the names all match up so that they know when they're in the right place. So don't overthink the domain. Do whatever makes sense, whatever's available, but I'm just suggesting to keep it consistent across all of your web platforms. Okay, step 4, define your menu. What's a menu? You go to a website and you see the logo in the top left corner. Squarespace has really great templates for this, but you see your logo in the top left corner, and then usually in the top right or somewhere, there's a menu, which is like 3 to 4 items that somebody can choose. And so on a piece of paper or on a Google Doc, I think it's important, after we've listed out our objectives, we want to list out, like, I would say anywhere between 2 to 4. More than 4 items introduces the paradox of choice, where people are like, okay, there's too many items for me here. So what you want to do is you want to look back at your objective and go, Scott said we should introduce our brand. Scott said we should give people a chance to listen to our music. And Scott also said that we should give people a chance to buy things from us. And so those are 3 pretty good ideas for your menu options. There may not be more than that for you. I'm telling you to keep it as simple as possible. And so if we look back at our goals of our website and our objective of our website, those could be a good indicator of what our menu should be. Now, this could be unique to your label. I know some record labels who, in addition to selling vinyl records, also sell skateboards, or they also sell home decor items, or they sell music plugins or beats. So the menu can be kind of distinct to you. But for most record labels, I think it's really important that you consolidate some of the similar options under the same menu title. So for example, let's say you want to have a bio for your record label. Let's say you want to have a contact us section. Let's say you want to introduce your roster, all the artists on your roster, and maybe even a discography. Well, I kind of argue that all of those items could fall under one About tab. Because if you had those 4 items, plus you added store, plus you added a Bandcamp link and social media, all of a sudden you have so many menu options that there's just too much choice and people are going to pick none of them. So I think if you have about, and then maybe shop, and then maybe listen, those are like the 3 things. We go back to our goals. Those are the 3 things that I think are most important. So under the about section, that's where they can maybe find the history of your label and the information about you and some of your staff members. Maybe that's where you could have a contact form if you want people to contact you. Maybe you can have your demo submission policy in that section. That's maybe where you could also list your roster. Maybe it spreads out from there, but I just think it's really important to kind of keep things concise. And maybe if people want to dig deeper, they can at that point. But from when it comes to menu options, keep them really, really minimal and simple. Okay, number 5 is to set up your store. We've talked about the commerce aspect of your record label. So now some people might just say, you know what? when you click store, it's just going to shoot right over to our Bandcamp. Maybe that's where you want to sell digital downloads. That's where you're going to sell your merch, or that's where you're going to sell some of your physical media like CDs, tapes, or vinyl. That's cool. Most people do that. I did that for the most part. Now, I know some labels are moving to handle some of their own stuff. Everybody will usually have a Bandcamp store, but to avoid some of the fees that are taken away, I've seen some labels who are setting up their own store using Shopify or using Big Cartel or Limited Run or Squarespace Commerce. And they're doing things like selling downloads. I use Squarespace Commerce to sell digital downloads. So I can sell like high quality FLAC records or MP3 files or digital art files without having someone like Bandcamp take 10%. So let's set up our store. When we go back to our menu items, one of our things is going to be shop or store or support. When they click on that, what's that going to take them to? Are you going to sell some products on your website, or are you going to shoot them over to Bandcamp? You could even have it where it's like you show, once you click on shop, then it's like you have some items that you sell, like maybe it's just record label merch. Maybe you sell like a $50 zip file that includes all of your albums in one. That's kind of cool. Maybe there's a donate button on there that you want people to support you directly. And then maybe there's links to other things like Spotify or Apple Music. Number 6 is let's create our about page. So we just talked about some of our menu items, and our about page, I've already kind of mentioned it, but basically I like it when you consolidate some similar stuff. So I do think it's important to have a roster, at least a current roster. I also think it's important to have some info about your record label. Now, that could be info about you, the founder. It could be the history of your record label, like the story of your record label, or it could just be a 1-paragraph or 2-sentence mission statement of like why you exist, what's unique about your record label, maybe what is the genre that you're promoting, what is your unique selling point, why people should follow your record label or support your record label. Those are good things to include in the About Us section. You could also have a discography. I had a discography back in the early days when I had my website, but it became really difficult to keep up to date with everything I was adding. And so I ended up just using Bandcamp as our discography. You could maybe link over to Discogs if you want for your discography, or you can create your discography on your About Us section. Same thing with your artist roster. You could just have a couple links, a couple pictures of your artist that like shoot over to their own website or to their own Spotify page or their own Instagram, however you want to do that. Just keep it simple and keep it sustainable. Oftentimes when I'm talking about like writing about your label, telling people about the history or the story of your label, if it's in a press release or an email to a writer, you want to keep it super short, right? Like 1 sentence or 2 sentences. People get way too bloated in those things, but the space to actually be bloated and to be a little self-indulgent is here on your website. So it's okay if you have like 3 or 4 or 100 paragraph story of your record label. This is kind of the place to do it. I don't think it's appropriate to have it in the bio section of your Twitter or your Instagram account or your Bandcamp account or when you email people, but here's the place to be a little bit bloated if you want. No big deal. Okay, number 7 is set up a contact page. So you could, first of all, I did say that we could include the contact page in the About Us section. So if there's only 3 headers, about, listen, shop, you click on the about, and it's like, okay, there's the history of the label, and here's how I contact the label. Most labels do it that way. But if you also wanted to have a 4th header and say contact, the question you have to ask yourself is, do I want people to contact me? In the early stages, if you're a small label, yeah, because it's probably going to be like local press or local promoters who want to book one of your artists. It could be people who want to use one of your songs for sync licensing. So I think that mostly only good things can come from people contacting you. So make yourself accessible until you become a huge label and you just don't want to hear from people anymore, whatever. But in the early days, maybe use Squarespace to set up a contact form where they can enter some of their information and get in touch with you if you want. That's great. You also want to ask yourself, are we accepting demos? Do we want to get emails from bands? And so what you could do is you could set up a nice little submission form where instead of just getting an email with a bunch of MP3s, like they actually have to fill in like their hometown and how many monthly listeners they have and what their objectives are. What do they want from a record label? You could have like a whole questionnaire on your website on a demo submission form that they send to you, and it comes to you in an email all neat and tidy with all of the information answered in an orderly fashion. So just think, do we want people to contact us? Is it going to be an email? Is it going to be a contact form? And do we want to accept demos? This might also be a good place to include your social media links because maybe you don't want to give an email. You just want people to DM you or follow you on social media. It's up to you. Step 8 is email marketing, meaning let's start to build a mailing list. At the very least, you've seen people say on your website, it's like, click here to join our mailing list or enter your email to join our mailing list. At the very least, do that. And even if you don't have an email strategy in place. Now, I've talked about email marketing. I've done a huge workshop on it. It's on the YouTube channel. You can check it out. We also have an ebook about email marketing. You can check that out as well. I've talked a lot about the importance of building a mailing list. I believe in the intimacy of email far more than social media. In fact, I've said before, I would rather 100 subscribers than 10,000 followers on Instagram. I believe that you can reach those 100 email subscribers way easier than trying to compete with the algorithms or like the kind of infinite scroll that people are doing on social media. So I really think it's important for record labels to start to build up a mailing list. At the very least, you can use your web platform to just have a little thing that connects to MailChimp, or I use Squarespace campaigns to enter emails and to grab their emails. And then maybe you only send emails like once a quarter or once a year. That's fine. I do think it's good to have a consistent email strategy that's maybe monthly, but we'll talk about that another time. And I've done a workshop on that a long time ago. But if you want to be really successful with building a mailing list, then you need to offer something in exchange. I was recently at a store in the mall and they were like, can I get your email? And they ask you that all the time. And I just say like, no, thanks. Just try to be like, kind of catch them off guard. And they're like, oh, okay. And I'm always just like, no, I don't really want to give my email. I don't make a big deal of it. I'm like, oh, that's okay, thanks, as if they were offering me something. The other day I was at this one store and they're like, can we get your email? I'm like, no, that's okay. And he's like, oh, it's just so that we know that you came in. And I was like, that's creepy. No, thank you. However, sometimes you go to a store and you're checking out and they ring up your total and then they say, would you like to give us your email address for 10% off today's order? And I'm like, sure, I'll save, $30 and give you my email, which I'll just unsubscribe from in a couple of days. Sure, that's a great deal. And so if you really want people's emails, you have to kind of give them something in exchange. So maybe you're giving them access to portal where it has like a behind the scenes video of your record label. I don't know. Maybe you're giving them access to a community or some sort of free download. I think it's really cool if a record label puts together like a massive 30, 40, 50 song compilation that they put in a zip folder and they say, enter your email to download like our free compilation that you can't get anywhere else. I don't know what people would exchange for their email. Maybe it's like to be on the inside about upcoming details, whatever. It's just like, at the very least, have something that says like, join our mailing list, but most people won't enter their email unless you're giving them something enticing, unless you're providing value. And it can be a coupon code. If you're selling things on your website or you have a Bandcamp and it's like, enter your email and you'll be sent a 10% off coupon code to use on Bandcamp, which is super easy to set up, then you can automate that on your website. And that way you'll probably get more emails added to your mailing list. Step 9 is sustainability. Make your website sustainable. What I mean by that is like maybe avoid having like a news section, or like I said, I had a discography. I just couldn't keep up with it as quickly as my Bandcamp could keep up with it. So basically, I think it's important to have your website be just this static place where people can come and learn about your record label. If they want like really up-to-date information, then they'll hop over to your social media accounts or even your YouTube account just so that they can learn more about you on a more up-to-date thing about like your most recent releases. Whereas I like to keep my website designed in such a way that it's relevant around the clock. And maybe it's like only updated every 6 months or every 12 months. But it's a problem and it looks really unprofessional if you go to someone's website and it's like, release party for such and such album happening this weekend, June 1st. And it's like December. And they're like, oh, these guys haven't updated their website in a long time. It makes you look like you're either unprofessional or the label's dead. At the very least, have a friend or one of your artists, or you just like kind of go to your website every month and just look it over and check if there's anything out of date or any links that don't work anymore. Number 10 is SEO for success. You want to do a couple little simple SEO things to make sure that you're found. SEO stands for search engine optimization, and there's a few really simple things you can do. So if you use like a Squarespace page and you go to any like standard website, you're going to see a logo in the top left corner and a menu in the top right corner, or that's switched around or whatever. And so maybe some social media links. Then like above the fold, as they used to say, the main page, you're going to see this like photograph, right? And then there's like a big headline on that page. This is like common for most websites. And we've talked about this in depth in our course. So you got to go check this out. But anyway, there's like a headline, right? And even when you're designing a website, the font or like the font style you use is called headline 1. And Google will actually use that headline and they'll keep it up to date in their system to know if your website is relevant to people's search. So for example, you would want to use this headline to say something like Detroit's newest lo-fi techno record label. What's really important is a headline like that has some really significant keywords that could make you turn up in search results. Detroit, lo-fi, techno, record label. These are all like really important keywords. Now, for you, it might be Nashville, modern bluegrass record label. You see what I'm saying? So take whatever is special and unique about your record label. It could be nonprofit indie rock record label from the Philippines. You know what I mean? Whatever it is that makes all of those things that are super specific to your record label, include that on your main page so that people come to your page and are like, wow, okay, I resonate with that. I got to check out more about this record label. But that headline will actually turn up in your Google search results so that if someone searches techno record label Detroit, you're probably going to turn up. It can be really helpful if you also include your city name or your country or something, if that is part of your identity, because then you'll be more likely to turn up with people who live nearby you. Okay, I'm going to put today's notes and maybe a little checklist together from everything I've talked about at otherrecordlabels.com/website. So you can use this as a little bit of a checklist when you're putting your record label website together. Feel free to show us your record label website in the comments below. And another shout out to Squarespace for sponsoring today's video. And I'll tell you, I love using Squarespace for my websites. And you can get 10% off by using the coupon code ORL10. Thanks for watching, and I hope you found this helpful.